Jashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Sutara Sati Shima. His Divine Grace, Abhaya Chanananda Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki. Jai Nichalila Vishnu Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Sutara Sati Shima. His Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Swami Prabhupada Ki. Granta Raj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki. Go Premanandi. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru, Sri Gauranga, and Srila Prabhupada. Reading from Srila Prabhupada's Leela Amrita, Volume 6, chapter titled, I Have Done My Part. Srila Prabhupada was especially pleased by letters he received from Ganesham, who was distributing books in the communist countries of Eastern Europe. Ganesham is Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. Ganesham was a member of the BBT Library Party, which was systematically traveling from country to country all over the world, placing full sets of Prabhupada's Srimad Bhagavatam and Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita in university libraries. In daring forays into communist Europe, Ganesham was meeting with success. On hearing his report, Prabhupada's demeanor transformed. My books are the real communism, he declared with enthusiasm. I am writing for the whole human society. My philosophy is to unite human society on the basis of Krishna consciousness, and that is actually happening. Why is the black man working for me, and the white man also? How much potency this boy has. Practically, he is preaching in the jungle. The people do not know the language, and still they are giving him standing orders. Prabhupada had said that the only real medicine for him was kirtan. And kirtan, he had explained, included preaching around the world. And for Prabhupada, who was taking so little food, the chanting of the holy name and the kirtan of preaching reports from his disciples seemed to be not only his medicine, but his sustenance as well. And it's notable that, the devotees continued to do their service even while Srila Prabhupada was lying in Vrindavan. It's not that everyone ran to Vrindavan. Prabhupada asked for his senior men to go. On the evening of the day Prabhupada received Ganesham's letter, he learned that Gopal Krishna had arrived with copies of several newly published Hindi books. Prabhupada had been lying in bed, but on receiving the good news, he raised his eyebrows and said, "Bring them immediately." Gopal Krishna entered with the books, and Prabhupada immediately sat up in ecstasy. Years ago, Srila Prabhupada had begun a large Gurukula in Dallas, Texas. But when the Texas state government had begun imposing too many restrictions, Prabhupada advised in 1976 that the boys' Gurukula be moved to Vrindavan, India. And this is an excerpt from the letter. The schools should be moved to our new project, Gurukul project in Vrindavan. The facility will be built just to suit the needs of the brahmachari to develop spiritually. To live in Vrindavan is the highest perfection, and to grow up in Vrindavan is the greatest fortune. Even to live in Mathura, Mandala for a fortnight guarantees one liberation. In Vrindavan, no one will place restrictions on the school, and it will be encouraged by the government. Thousands will send their children to be trained as human beings and devotees. The atmosphere in Vrindavan is beyond compare, and the Krishna Balaram Mandir is the finest in the world. By June 1977, the Gurukul building in Vrindavan was near completion, and the devotees managing the Gurukul were contemplating opening the building in the near future. They were discussing how the rooms should be used, including which rooms should be for staff offices and residences. Although Srila Prabhupada had not been consulted on these details, he seemed to know what was going on. And one morning he told the secretary he would like to see the new building from top to bottom. After taking darshan of Krishna and Balaram, he was carried in his chair for a tour of the new building. Pleased with the construction, he remarked, "By Krishna's grace, everything has been done nicely." The second floor was one continuous wide veranda with many connecting rooms. The persons in charge, explained to Krishna, have one room for residence and one room for office. Very comfortable, Prabhupada remarked. He heard and observed everything, occasionally making suggestions. There should be a flower garden and a fountain in the central courtyard, which there was. "I think there is no other building equal to this in Vrindavan," he said. As they came to the first floor, Akshayananda Maharaj, one of the temple managers, pointed out to Prabhupada, "I want to keep my office here." "That's nice," said Prabhupada, "but because we have got a big enough place now, we should not think I shall keep one leg in one place and one leg in another place. And then the whole thing is mismanaged. Don't do that. Don't misuse even 1 inch. You were saying you wanted 500 students," said one of the Gurukula teachers. "So we should keep as much space as possible for the students on the floors." "Yes," said Srila Prabhupada. This was the point he wanted, stressed. But then another devotee remarked, "We are going to have administrative offices mixing here, both for the temple and the Gurukul." "No," said Prabhupada. "You have to invite children here. Otherwise, what is the use of building such a big building? Not that we have 36 managers and 4 students." Although Prabhupada's soft voice was sometimes lost amid the noise of construction, and although his comments were made intermittently while being carried from place to place, his message was strong and clear. "Now we have a big facility," he said, "so bring students. That is the first principle." "We have to get the ISKCON students first," said one of the teachers. "ISKCON or FISKCON," said Srila Prabhupada. "Bring students." Prabhupada's wordplay made the devotees laugh, but he was serious. "It is a Rakshasa civilization," said Srila Prabhupada, and he began mimicking the cry of a typical street vendor, do rupya, and no knowledge. Krishna said, "Tata dehantara prapti," but all they can understand is 2 rupees, 4 rupees. Where they will go in the next life, they do not understand. They do not understand eternal life, only how to enjoy this life. They don't understand one line of the Gita, yet they say, "I read Gita." This darkness is going on, and people are kept in darkness in the name of so-called university education. So our Gurukula will be successful. It may take time. Srila Prabhupada ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, 20th chapter entitled Conversation Between Maitreya and Vidura. Texts 14 through 16. Is that correct? So I'll read text 14, 15, and then we'll chant text 16. Tani chaika kasashrashtum asyamartani bautikam samhatya davayogena haimam andamavasrijan. So sayistabdi shailile andakosho niratmaka sagram vai varsat sahasam Anvavatsit-tamishvaraha. Please repeat. Tasya nabhaya bhut padmang. Tasya nabhaya bhut padmang. Sahasrakordiditi. Savijivanikayoko. Yatra sayanga bhut swarat. Please chant. Tasya nabhaya bhut padmang. Sahasrakordiditi. Savijivanikayoko. Yatra sayama bhut swarat. Ladies. Tasya nabhaya bhut padmang. Sahasrakordiditi. Savijivanikayoko. Yatra sayama bhut swarat. Sahasrakordiditi. Sahasrakordiditi. Savijivanikayoko. Yatra swayama bhut swarat. Tasya of the Lord, nabe, from the navel, abhut, sprouted up, padmam, a lotus, sahasra arka, 1,000 suns, uru, more, diditi, with dazzling splendor, sarva, all, jivanikaya, resting place of conditioned souls. Okaha, place, yatra, where, swayam, himself, abhut, emanated, swarat, the omnipotent Lord Brahma. Translation and purport by Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Separately, so I'm reading from text 14 through to text 16. Separately unable to produce the material universe, they combined with the help of the energy of the Supreme Lord and were able to produce a shining egg. Text 15. For over 1,000 years, the shiny egg lay on the waters of the causal ocean in the lifeless state. Then the Lord entered it as Garbhodakshay Vishnu. Purport. From this verse, it appears that all the universes are floating in the causal ocean. Text 16. From the navel of the personality of Godhead, Garbhodakshay Vishnu, sprouted a lotus flower effulgent, like 1,000 blazing suns. This lotus flower is the reservoir of all conditioned souls. And the first living entity who came out of the lotus flower was the omnipotent Brahma. Please repeat. From the navel of the personality of Godhead, Garbhodakshai Vishnu, sprouted a lotus flower effulgent like 1,000 blazing suns. This lotus flower is the reservoir of all conditioned souls. And the first living entity who came out of the lotus flower was the omnipotent Brahma. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. It appears from this verse that the conditioned souls who rested within the body of the personality of Godhead after the dissolution of the last creation came out in the sum total form of the lotus. This is called Hiranyagarbha. The first living entity to come out was Lord Brahma, who was independently able to create the rest of the manifested universe. The lotus is described here as effulgent, as the glare of 1,000 suns. This indicates that the living entities, as parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, are also of the same quality, since the Lord also diffuses his bodily glare known as Brahmajyoti. The description of Vaikuntha Loka, as stated in Bhagavad Gita and other Vedic literatures, is confirmed herewith. In Vaikuntha, the spiritual sky, there is no need of sunshine, moonshine, electricity, or fire. Every planet there is effulgent like the sun. Noma Jnana Tamranda Shagananjana Shakaya Chakshur Amlatamina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Lankaya Teguram Yat Kripatamaham Bande Shri Gurum Dinataranam. It's a very interesting conversation. Imagine having a conversation like this. In Kali Yuga, everyone is Manda Samanda Matayo Manda Bhagya Upadruta. They hardly can concentrate on anything unless it's a constant feed. That's why people are so engrossed in their portable devices. They don't take the time to contemplate anything. It's just moving from one random situation to another continuously. And so in this way, there's no collected consciousness. Their thoughts are scattered. And so this is this endeavor, bhakti yoga, Krishna consciousness, the science of self-realization takes vyavasayamika buddhi. It takes one-pointed attention, it takes focus. You cannot simply think that by some temporary, momentary experience that you will get the full realization of what is the total, like this here, like the sum total of all the living entities was Hiranyagarbha. Now, what does that mean? The sum total of all the living entities, and that they were as brilliant as the sun. So in the previous dissolution, all the living entities who remained were wound up again in the body of Vishnu. Right? But they're not wound up in their material bodies, obviously. But they're wound up in their forms as the spirit souls. This 1/10,000 Keshagraha, 1/10,000th the size of a tip of a hair. So in that state, I guess you can fit a lot of living entities. 1/10,000th the size of a tip of a hair. And it's because of those living entities that the material world is again manifest and come out. And it says in the previous verses that this is the actual cause of the material creation. The latent remaining desires of those living entities are perpetuating the creation, the recreation of this cosmic manifestation. It's just like if you have a prison house and you have no prisoners, then they're going to close the prison. It no longer has any use. But as long as there's even one prisoner, they have to keep the whole place open. So this is the situation here. That we are the remaining prisoners, right? Sometimes you should refer to the devotees as inmates. And that carried over into places like New Vrindavan, where, this reference, it was not a pejorative, a negative connotation. It was a sense of camaraderie, that we're all in it together. Just like in the Navy, they referred to each other as shipmates. Everybody's on the ship. And mate is a term which refers to a familial relationship. Right? In Australia, which was a penal colony, by the way, they still call each other mate. And where does that come from? It comes from inmate. So these terms have different meanings according to the context. So here in Radha Govinda's temple, we are also inmates. And we're serving the Supreme Lord. And we even see that Prabhupada used that analogy, right? That ISKCON is a boat. And the Vedas, the Vedic literature, are the favorable breezes that fill the sails and keep the boat moving. And that Srila Prabhupada is the captain of the ship. And we are all shipmates. So there's many analogies like that. And the boat, it can accommodate, just like we use that term, a house the whole world. Prabhupada built a house the whole world can live in. And he refers to that in Leelamrita, that this was his intention. That he was writing these books, this philosophy, to unite humanity. And we haven't come across any other philosophy that even comes close. It's all a hodgepodge. You can't unite humanity in population control, or climate change, or saving the manatee. These things don't resonate with everyone. But going back home, back to Godhead, now there's something I could get on board with. Who wouldn't want to gain eternal liberation? And therefore many religions push that. They don't push the hell aspect. They don't say, hey, come and worship with us and we'll get a free ticket to hell. No, they say, you come worship with us, we'll get a free ride to heaven. Although they do have that term, right? Fire and brimstone. Because the preachers like to try to balance it. They try to intimidate you. And if you don't take up this philosophy, you're going to Hades. Another word for hell. Because Hades is from a different philosophy and a different ethnic origin. But nevertheless, it means the same thing. Everyone has experience in this regard. So we don't have any need to push that idea of that, for intelligent class of men, that if you don't follow this philosophy, that you'll have to suffer. There's already enough suffering in the material world. When my friends were coming back from Vietnam, there was a jacket that everyone used to come back with. And it said, when I die, I'm going to heaven because I've spent my time in hell. Okay? So that's their juxtaposition, their reference point. Right? So war is a hellish thing. All these different experiences, they're meant to give us some understanding of the polar opposites. Birth and death, goodness and evil, heaven and hell. So for an intelligent person, he tries to understand what these references allude to. Right? So if we have a choice to make, then it should be based on an intelligent perusal of the Vedic philosophy. And we see here that very clearly, when Prabhupada said in Lilamrita, the one who spends even 2 weeks in Mathura Mandala, he can expect to achieve liberation. Of course, if you continue to do the old elephant trick, the prayashchitta, elephants bathing, if you come back from Mathura Mandala, you're good to go. No more sins. Don't do anything that's going to challenge your status. Right? You have to, just like, after taking bath, you don't go out of the bath and jump in a mud puddle. So you get the benediction of going to Mathura Mandala, but then you come back and you do all nonsense. Then that benediction, you have to read the fine print. It becomes null and void. Right? It's still there. All you have to do is stop your nonsense, and that guarantee becomes reinstated. Even if you've never set foot in Mathura Mandala again in your whole life. Just like Ajamil. He was a Brahmin boy. He was pious family. He was going to the Gurukula. Everything was hunky-dory. He was just nothing, everything was fine until he ran across that Shudra and Shudrani. And practically speaking, we're running across these Shudra and Shudranis every day. We have to be careful, and they were locked tightly in an embrace. And it doesn't go into more detail, but it's not necessary. His mind was disturbed. So obviously it wasn't a casual hug. And that image stayed with him, and it became so emblazoned on his consciousness that he pursued that prostitute until he captured her. And then he spent his whole life stealing, robbing, murdering, whatever he had to do in order to support her. So what to speak, this is in an age where the vices were not so prominent. You have Satya, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali yugas. They were not so prominent, and yet he became captured in this regard. So what to speak of us? But because he had performed those pious activities, most likely in a holy place, somehow or other he was able to, by design or by accident, call out the name of his son, Narayan. And why did he name his son Narayan? He probably didn't even realize it. Just some vestigial remnant of his pious activities. Because in the Vedic, rituals, all the time you're chanting Om Namo Narayan. And so it just popped in his head, and he named his kid Narayan. And that act, unknowingly, unthinkingly, unintentionally, saved him at the time of death. So that's the benefit, the small benefit of that, his pious activities, but all arranged, by destiny, by karma. Just like by our destiny and karma, this whole material world was created. Right? What did a famous retort, if anyone's had the pleasure of raising kids, and they get to a certain age, that teenage age, when you're trying to get them to do what they're supposed, go to school or whatever, do the normal things, they'll come back. And what is it they come back with? I didn't ask to be born. You ever hear that one? I didn't ask to be born. It's your fault. And you wonder where they get these things. But yeah, actually you did ask to be born by your previous activities. But that's a different philosophical level. They don't want to hear anything at that point. So, but for those members of the Krishna conscious movement, we can appreciate that in a situation like Ajamya, where he finds himself. And he was able to chant the name purely because it was attached to the love of his son. And a parent's love for a child is basically unalloyed, unmotivated. it's as pure as you can get in the material world. It's not based on sense gratification. I don't expect anything with regards to sense pleasure from the children. So that love is pure. So he called out the name of Narayan purely in an emotion of love. And look who appeared. The Vishnu Dutas, boom, right there. The Yamadutas are like vultures. They're hovering. They know when you're going to die. They don't have to appear there just like, they're already there. They're all around and they just manifest, and they not only do they manifest, they help you. They say, well, what's the point of waiting? They put that noose around your neck and just start tugging at that subtle body. And then that's it. Once you're out of that, they're yours. You're theirs. They've got you. Just like an animal with a noose around your neck. And they drag you to Samyamami. It's not a pleasant situation when you read in fifth canto what they're doing. At the speed of the mind, you show up in the court of Yamaraj. At the speed of the mind. So you don't have a lot of time. So when he chanted Narayan, the Yamadutas were already there slipping that noose around his neck. So he didn't have, just a microsecond. But he was saved. So that's Ajamil. So just think of the good fortune that the members of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness have. Where every day you have the opportunity to chant the holy names purely. Because the emphasis is on the word opportunity. You have to take the opportunity. It's just like if I want to, there's that story about the devotee. Prabhupada was encouraging him to join the temple, and he was actually handing him a dhoti. And the devotee was like, he wasn't a devotee actually yet. He was refusing, he was running away at the time. So this is the situation, where Prabhupada is encouraging us. The Chaitya Guru, the spiritual master in the heart, is encouraging us. And we're still kind of like, well, let me see, I'll try it for a little while. So therefore in the Nectar of Instruction it says, first thing, utsahan nishtaya, enthusiasm. Because without enthusiasm, you come to Mangalarti, it's just like, okay, I'm here. What time is it? All right, 20 more minutes. Okay. So this is, we have to realize the benefit in order to take advantage of the benefit. So this acknowledgement is a conscious endeavor. This is what Krishna consciousness is. I have to overwhelm my material consciousness. And in so many ways we've seen that Prabhupada's given us this analogy of, replacing one thing with another. If you have a glass of dirty water, by displacement, pouring in clean, fresh water, automatically it will be displaced. And the cup will remain with the clear water. So that's what Krishna consciousness, where just, it's the actual replacement theory. There's some political consideration now about replacement theories. But this is the real replacement theory. It's negative consciousness with pure consciousness. Tada rajastamo bhavo kamalo bhadayasche cheta ete anarvidam ditvam sattvam prasidate. And it should be seen in your activities. It's not that I have to ask you, hey, are you approaching the mode of goodness yet? It's seen. Prabhupada demonstrated that when he walked past that dirty bathroom in Mayapur in the corner where the property joins the long building and the boundary wall. And it was a filthy bathroom. And Prabhupada, when he came back this is his morning walk, he comes back to the temple room to give class. And after the translation, and he starts out by saying, this such a nasty place, mode of ignorance. And no one took care. No one did anything about it. He basically said if you see something in the mode of ignorance and you don't act on it, it's because you don't see it, because you're in the same mode. Right? We've seen that. Right? People don't see things properly because they have, myopia means nearsighted. You know, they have and so someone is said to be myopic if he cannot focus on the big picture, the reality. And so if you're in a mode of ignorance, you don't recognize the mode of ignorance. Another analogy, I know all you pure devotees here probably never smoked cigarettes, but if you don't smoke cigarettes and you come in contact with someone who does, you can immediately tell that this person is a smoker. Matter of fact, it's one of those things like when you go to buy a car, they advertise it, smoke-free, non-smoking car. Or if you go to a hotel room, you want a non-smoking room. Why? Because the odor lingers. It doesn't dissipate. It permeates everything. So if it's a car or a room, or if it's a person and it's clothes, you can immediately tell. So people in the mode of ignorance, they cannot really tell they're in the mode of ignorance. So you have to take them out. But you can tell by their actions. And so you have to do a little self-examination and see, am I still attached to these activities, the remnants of my previous sources of pleasure? You know? Because if that attachment is there, then that mode of goodness will not be reached. And the indication there in the Bhagavatam is that if one is not situated in the mode of goodness, then real knowledge cannot take place. The heart has to be clean. That's why it says, Punya Shravana Kirtana, Hridyan Taksto, Yabhadrani, Vidunoti Suretsatam. So it's like the small print and everything else when in the Bhagavatam, in the very beginning, it says you have to have a pure heart and you have to listen purely. Otherwise, don't waste your time. You're not going to get the message. So this is an important consideration. You know, why we're in the temple, we're all chanting, we're all engaging in the purificatory activities, serving the spiritual master, serving Sri Sri Radha Govinda, then automatically knowledge and detachment, Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojata, Janaya Yasivaragya Gyanam Chayarahoida. Automatically it will take place. But you have to be humble. You have to be submissive. You have to approach the spiritual master in that mood. Right? Tadvidi pranipatena pariprasnena sevya. Upadekshanti tegam. Gyaninas tatvadarsanat. And he will show you the truth because he has seen the truth. But that mood of humble submission, if it's not there, if there's simply a challenging attitude, then it's just like, what do they say? A full pot. There's a few different analogies about this pots. Apparently pots were very popular in the Vedic times. You have the empty pot analogy, you have the full pot analogy. So the full pot analogy is that if a person is thinking that he knows everything, then it's very difficult to tell them anything. You know? What is the simplified version of that? They say that he or she is full of himself. Right? Everyone's heard that term. Right? You can't tell him anything. He's full of himself. They also say it the other way. When he doesn't know anything, they say he's full of something else. Right? So in either case, it's a difficult situation. You know, you can't. So you have to kind of recognize the psycho-physical situation of that person. You know, of course, if you go Palchampu, just by approaching that person, you're going to put him in a good mood. And that's key to giving him a book. You got to catch him. You got to change his mood. If he's in his mood of the Russian commuter, the New York Minute And the rat race is not going to, you got to stop him. Got to take him out of that mode. So this is, the preachers of the Krishna conscious movement are expert. And Ganesham, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, he was extremely erudite, intellectual, and articulate. Much more so than many of his god brothers. And he could approach, and he was a Princeton University fellow, graduate. And his whole demeanor was impressive. Confidence in the philosophy, absolute faith in his spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. He would walk in and just, people would automatically relate to him. He had that friendly, confident mood. Yeah. And so he would associate with heads of state and kings and all types of personalities, moving them. And there has to be a little, what's the French term? Savoir-faire. You have to have a little bit of that attitude in order to be successful in book distribution, in preaching. And he had it in spades. So, and Prabhupada was extremely pleased. So Prabhupada is always pleased when we're using our natural talents in the service of Krishna. You don't have to make up some talent. You just have to find out what it is you're good at and do it. And then Krishna will gradually give you a situation where you will continue that jolly, utsahan, enthusiastic mood and mode. Don't have to seek it artificially. I'm not happy here. I have to go someplace else. No. Happiness, Krishna can give anyone happiness. He's giving happiness to the ants. So how can he not give? How is it that he'll withhold happiness from you? They're just doing their ant thing. And somehow or other, their consciousness is satisfied. But it's a very low level of consciousness. What's the consciousness of the ant? Do you know? It's called anamoya. They're just looking for food continuously. Anamoya. And the germs, they don't even have that. They're living entities also. But their only consciousness is I exist. Nothing else. They're not searching for food. They're not searching for anything else. But the human being is Gyanamoy. He's not Pranamoy. He can be all those lower conditions of consciousness. But his constitutional position is Gyanamoy or Vigyanamoy. And knowledge. He has the ability to analyze, to observe, to recognize that Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam. That Krishna is the Supreme. Cannot be done in any other situation. And here, it is easier than any place else. So this is a special, just like when you go to the university. You go to the university because everything, all the facilities is there in one place. You have the lecture rooms, you have the library, you have the faculty, you have the curriculum. So this is all constructed specifically to create an environment of learning. So that's what a temple is. Temple is not just a residential situation for a few individuals who kind of have a loose, understanding of, whatever. We have lunch at 1:30, we have breakfast at 9, It's a shelter of a different sort. But it is a shelter. Ashram, ashraya means shelter. So it's very important to recognize those beneficial features. Otherwise, then you'll think, well, why am I here? I can eat and sleep any place. I don't have to be here. Actually, I can eat and sleep better someplace. My parents have a very nice room for me. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to do my laundry. I don't have to clean my room. Mom will do it. So once you recognize the benefit, then you should really strive. It's like when you're, we can use the analogy of a race. You know, if you're in a race, you're trying to achieve a certain result. You're trying to win. You're trying to beat out the guy in the next lane. And you have to constantly keep an eye out that, and then in the last stretch, you have to put on that burst in order to maximize the distance, the lead. So although we're not in a so-called race, we do have limited time. This is, after all, Marcha Locum. It's a place of death, not a place of life. And as a matter of fact, it's even more urgent now because all of a sudden people are dying suddenly. You can read it in the papers. Died suddenly, died suddenly, died. Of course, that's just a euphemism in one sense. Everybody's going to die suddenly or otherwise. And it's according to your karma. And of course, you can accelerate your karma. You can commit suicide even. And there are people, there's countries that allow you to do it. They'll even help you because they don't want you. You're just another, what are they, oxygen-hogging living entity. You can give your oxygen to somebody else. One less mouth breather, on the planet. Okay? That's why the abortion industry is so huge. Because somewhere somebody thinks that, let's control the population, let's just kill all the babies, Sounds good, right? So they're going on like this. So we have to recognize, who we are, Sambandha Abhideya Prayojan, who we are, what is our relationship, and what is the goal of that relationship. And that will guide us. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta stressed these three things. They seem very primary in one sense, like you teach kids the primary colors. Because if they can master that, if they can grasp that, they can understand all the different combinations. So within these aspects of spiritual life, Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayoja, there's lots of activities involved, and one should try to appreciate where he is in the scheme of things. Do I understand who am I? Because if I don't understand that, or I'm not this body, then I'm not going to be here long. Because everything will seem disconnected. Will have no relationship to the goal. You go into college, you stay in college, why? Because at the end of that 4 years, you're going to get a piece of paper that says something. Bachelor of Science, Bachelor of Arts, something. So we also have to have that consideration. This is the preliminary. I shouldn't be expecting more than the unrealistic, that I'm going to be levitating or walking on air. Right? They used to have some college where they used to teach people levitation. And there's also a bridge in Brooklyn that I can sell you. Right? But yet people were attracted to that. They wanted to levitate. Because these mystic cities are very attractive. That's what distracts the yogi from the ultimate goal. He gets caught up in being able to do all these things that ordinary people can't do. So you have to concentrate. Who am I? Who is Krishna? Who is God? And what is my relationship? Those three things. That's your high school, graduate, postgraduate. Everything is there. Just have to figure out where you are and then work on it, stick to it. Don't get distracted, by other things, It's a very nice philosophy. It has everything. And some people get lost in it, because they can't, you get the fifth canon and it's like, oh my goodness. Here's the cosmic manifestation. I couldn't even conceive of it. It seems so unrealistic. But that's almost the point in one sense. Because how could you know, except what, through your imperfect senses, what the scientists are telling you? Prabhupada used to joke, so the scientists are your authority. You're accepting whatever they say. We went to the moon, we went here, we went there. But you have not gone. So you're accepting them as authority. And so it's just a matter of whose authority you accept, the Vedas or the scientists. Right? And you do have to make a choice at some point, otherwise you'll be bewildered. So even though there's no Maha cleanup, there are still duties to perform, activities to prepare for the Sunday feast, make sure the guests are all properly greeted, and at least to that extent, whoever is scheduled for cleaning the lobby and making sure everything is attractive, that should be done without fail, sometime before the feast. Right? This is the only reason we have this temple, is to attract the devotees, those that don't even know that they're devotees yet, to bring them into the temple so that they can be exposed and reawaken their dormant Krishna consciousness. It's how we came, it's how everyone comes, so we should make sure that it's, and we don't want to get nostalgic about it, but that's the way. Everyone remembers, oh, when I came, the temple was like this, and like this, and like this. Such a happy time. So we want to give everyone that experience. A person who comes in today should be able to say in 20 years, yeah, it was the greatest time. The devotees were so nice. They gave me everything I needed. They were so friendly. My material desires melted away in their association. So that should be the common experience, just like we had it. Any questions or comments? Yes, Mr. Ryan.
So you're talking about motive sattva, motive rajas, and giving the example of, places that are unclean and not kept orderly. We can clearly tell that that's a motive of darkness, motive ignorance. But could you say a little bit more, because it's a very registic culture, and it's hard to actually find, it's a very registic culture that we live in. It's hard to find models of motive sattva, and I don't always fully understand what that looks like in a personality.
Well, you found it. You found a hidden jewel in the Bhagavad Gita. I mean, what were you searching for when you came to spiritual life? Did you have a clear conception of what spiritual life was?
I had an impersonal conception of what spiritual life is.
Very honest, an impersonal conception. Mm-hmm. Most people have an impersonal conception because they don't know who God is, so they have to create some conception. And it's just as easy to have no conception than it is to have some imagined conception. But the solution, of course, in all respects, is knowledge. And this culture, more than any other culture, promotes knowledge by giving practical, what is that verse in the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita? Did you read that one yet? Raja Vidya Raja Goyam Pavicha Midamutamam Pratyaksha Bhagamam Dhamyam Susukam Kartamam. This knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge. And because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting and joyfully performed. So that is the essence right there. If we recognize that, then why would we want to experience or pursue something inferior? If I give you gold, and then later on come back and say, I'll trade you for some copper, would, an intelligent person accept an equal weight, a pound of copper for a pound of gold? No. But a fool might, or someone easily manipulated, right? People are being sold things all the time that they don't want, like timeshares. Because people, they just, they get them in the right mode and mood and say the right words, and, all of a sudden you have yourself a timeshare in Hawaii. Right? So we have to just, the safest, Prabhupada said the safest platform is kirtan. So kirtan is not just, kirtan means hearing and chanting. It also means chanting, street sankirtan. It also means preaching. With that, Prabhupada alluded to that in the Lilamrita just now. Again, everything is there. So we just have to be satisfied. Kirtaniya sadahari. Satatam kirtayantam mam yatantas chadrida vrataha. Namasyantas tamam bhaktya nitya yukta upasate. Everything is there. The Bhagavad Gita is our primary book of knowledge. It's actually the primary book of knowledge for the entire world, but for us also, there's the basis for further realization. And so it needs to be constantly referenced. Not just that. Now I'm too advanced. I don't read Bhagavad Gita anymore. I only read Chaitanya Charitamrita. I only read something else. Pick it, one of a million. There's so many Vedas, 108 Puranas, Upanishads, all these things. I read that 20 years ago. I don't have to read it anymore. No, but this is a major mistake if someone is thinking like that. I just have to keep reading. No. Yes, read all of Prabhupada's books, absolutely. But studying Bhagavad Gita is what coalesces, and it gives you an idea of how much you've evolved spiritually. Because you read it now, a year later, I guarantee you, you will have more realization. Same words, same book, different realization. Why? Because I am evolving spiritually. Right? So I recognize, it's not something that you're thinking that, okay, let me get some continuing education credits. I need to read Bhagavad Gita to get my continuing education credits, right? To keep my license. No, you do it because you know that there's things which you need to remember or you need to re-remember, and that you need to utilize either for self-preaching, right? Self-conviction. How many times have you come into a situation where, you're confronted by some whatever, so many impediments and obstacles in the material world, but then you remember that verse, that not from the Bhagavatam, but from the Gita, like that Rajavidya verse. Everlasting and joyfully performed. So I need to just remember, have a hold on that. And, Krishna will reciprocate. How did Prabhupada reinforce that? He said, even if you don't feel like dancing, dance and the bliss will come. Because demonstrating that enthusiasm is all the super soul needs to see in order to release a little bliss your way. Because otherwise, where does bliss come from? You're dancing and, all of a sudden. And the kirtan starts to pick up, but obviously you get yes. And you jump in and you start dancing, and boy, then you wish it would go on forever. You know, non-stop kirtan. So we have that experience of tasting this bliss. So we have to remember it. And if you had the opportunity to experience that bliss, that taste, you can always recollect it. You can say, yes. I remember when Prabhupada was sitting on this Vyasasan, chanting Jai Radha Madhava, and people were jumping up and down. They were distributing the load on our weak floor. If everyone, you know, when you walk over a bridge in the military, you have to break cadence. You don't walk in step. They tell you to break cadence, break step. Because if everyone marches in cadence, it sets up vibration. Chaitanya Nanda knows that because he works with engineers all the time. So this way everybody walks at a different frequency. But if they were all walking at the same time, boom, 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 you could collapse a bridge. So, anyway, we're not out here to collapse any bridges, you know, and our desire to work together transcends the mundane engineering considerations. So we should all act together in everything we do as much as possible. And then you'll see, Krishna will give success. It was like no one expected that this temple would even be here now. You know, 5 years ago, it was actually sold, you know, without the GBC knowing. It was a very desperate situation. But Krishna was able to change it and turn it around. This is what Krishna does. If there are some sincere souls endeavoring by consciously acting, otherwise it's just, you know, it would have been gone. So we have the opportunity to consciously act. We should always be acting, you know, with that focus, that vyavasayatmaka buddhi. And then we'll see that things will increase. It'll give you the enthusiasm and the bliss, the taste for which we are always anxious. And you will never, ever, it's like, what is that? Even the materialists, they have that saying, no regrets, right? No regrets. You know, if you're even harboring the slightest regret, that will act as an anchor in your forward spiritual life. Think, oh, why did I come here? I had such a nice situation. Nobody bothered me. No. That regret will prevent you from experiencing the full nectar of Krishna consciousness. You have to reject it, you know, whatever it is. So it's a very practical, right? Practically realized, a very practical philosophy. There's nothing in here that's impractical, you know. But the mind can always pick on some small thing. So avoid concentrating any of your energy on these negative points. You know? Any other questions? We don't want to delay any more than this. I'm always available, mostly. Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Sri Sri Radha Govinda Dev ki. Isn't that a beautiful altar? Look at that. That's amazing. We have to give credit to Mukta Banja Prabhu of the Boston Temple for very nicely collecting these flowers for us to go and collect, to